What do you want to talk about today on your podcast?
Well, the first thing I always ask, as you know, is what have you eaten today?
I literally, like right before we got on, I was like, I need some food because I'm going to have a blood sugar crash before we get on. So I have eaten today 2 pieces of gluten-free toast, 1 egg, 2 pieces of Trader Joe's maple breakfast sausage, and a cup of cherry tomatoes and a cup of sliced cucumbers.
Oh, that sounds pretty darn good. What is gluten-free toast made from?
This particular one is from Canyon Bakehouse, which is a Colorado-based company who I find it to be the most palatable. I am gluten-free by obligation, not by choice.
The thing about gluten-free by obligation, is that because your guy is gluten sensitive?
No, that's me. I have celiac.
You don't have to have bread. Right.
I mean, I love a good cookie. I just don't get to eat them. And I enjoy cooking and baking. And when I had to become gluten-free, it was like a new science project. So what have you eaten today?
Let's see, pretty much standard stuff, which is today was eggs, bacon, avocado, some walnuts, a lot of coffee. And, I think that was it. That's it so far.
I totally left out the coffee. Who leaves out the coffee?
I don't know how you can do that.
We're just, as we randomly find out about all my habits, I get up at 5:05 in the morning and I go to the CrossFit gym at 6.
So what would happen, Angie, if you overslept and you woke up at 5:06?
I would just make my pour over a little bit faster.
Because I remember the first time we spoke, you said how not anal, but very organized you are. And so when you said 5:05, that just kind of brought that up.
I am a routine person. And my problem is because I get up at 5 a.m. that I can't stay up past about 9:12.
Okay.
And so all of my friends know that. And I am the old lady of the circle who turns into a pumpkin at 9 p.m.
Right. You're the one who always falls asleep before the good times get rolling.
I like it.
Yeah. So CrossFit, I didn't realize you were into that. That's a little bit brutal and extreme, isn't it?
Here's what's interesting about that. That's exactly what I thought until I started doing it. It can be if you want it to be, but it doesn't have to be. And
so how hard do you beat up on yourself on any given day?
Well, it's interesting you ask, because today's workout was a doozy and I beat up on myself. Mm-hmm. But that's okay. I'll take it easy tomorrow, maybe.
How long have you guys been in Colorado?
I've been here for 15 years. I moved here in the fall of 2008. I spent the first 2 years in Breckenridge, Colorado. Jim has been here for almost 20 years. And so I moved from Breckenridge over to Aspen, which is, we live just outside of Aspen now, 13 years ago.
Tell me a little bit about what you've been doing lately. What's going on with your business and your website and your relationships regarding all that?
I've got my hands in all kinds of things. So first thing is I have a podcast called No More Mondays, where this guy's been a guest. So you should go check that conversation out, the other side of the conversation. And No More Mondays is one piece of the Career Benders puzzle. So Career Benders is a full service career services firm. I started it 5.5 years ago at the beginning of 2018. And I really focus on career coaching, resume writing, and let's say professional development for executives and entrepreneurs.
You're one of the very few people who's doing this kind of coaching who's actually experienced and educated, and not just somebody who just popped up since COVID and decided they were going to do this.
Yeah, that's one of the challenges. And I'll be honest, I struggle with the word coach. I don't love it. However, it's marketing 101. You speak the language of your audience. And if somebody wants to go find someone who is going to help them with career stuff, they're probably not going to help somebody for help me with career stuff, or career steward, or career engineer, or career strategist. They're going to type career coach. And so I kind of ran with it. But I do agree that coaching as an umbrella, regardless of the specialty that you serve, can be a real challenge because it's unregulated.
Now, if I were to present you with a small challenge, would you consider that?
Of course.
Okay, you and I know each other a little bit, and you know that I have a background, kind of an interesting and colorful one, and yet I feel like I'm highly unemployable, although I think that I would be extremely valuable to a whole bunch of companies, corporations, artists, creatives, and otherwise, and yet the world is not reaching out to me. They're not pinging me and saying, hey, Matthew, come be our consultant, come be our designer, come be our project manager. How would you be able to help someone like me in this situation in the post-COVID world, to a guy who doesn't want to leave home, but still wants to make himself valuable to the world at large?
So how about we give everybody a little glimpse into that answer via a little mini coaching session?
I think I'm ready.
Okay, because I'll answer the question in a very broad sense of my perspective on coaching, consulting, anything that's like, let's call it that IP service-based type of business where it's a little intangible. My perspective on it is to really root it and start it with understanding and getting clarity on who you want to serve and how you want to help them, so that you can very specifically message your approach and the solutions that you provide to that group. And so for you have there was quite a spectrum of, I can help all these types of people, but I want to know how you want to help them.
I do too. When you talk about being able to help people, when you're in a kind of pay it forward part of your life, in that kind of segment, you believe that it really doesn't have any limits or boundaries. And so if I can help people and be paid handsomely for it, I would be fine utilizing the experience, the education, and the skill set that I have.
This is like almost the layers of the onion that we peel back.
Right.
Is what experiences, what empathy do you bring to these engagements that would build the trust with the client to say, okay, Matt's been through this. Even if it's only a half step ahead, I trust that he can guide me through a journey that he is just a little ahead of me on, or a few years ahead of me on. And that to me builds really, really successful coaching engagements, because you understand firsthand what a client is trying to go through. And so you have a greater insight and perspective into their problems, and you can be the solution to it.
What if we take my very obscure layout and proposal that I put out there a few minutes ago and say something along the lines that I want to be able to help creatives bridge the gap between being a creative and becoming a business person?
I love that. That is a very specific value proposition and message that connects to creatives, but it's nice because creatives could mean a lot of different things. It could mean an artist. It could mean a chef. It could mean somebody who, I don't know, dances or plays music, but it could also mean somebody who is like strategically creative, or just, in other words, can't quite figure out how to execute on business.
Right.
And so now what happens when somebody comes to, your website, or they find you in like a passive way, they immediately know what problem you solve. I help creatives bridge the gap between their artistic expression and the business that will create an actual financial foundation. And in a way, it has to have like a little bit of a hook. And I don't mean that in a smarmy sales or marketing kind of capacity.
So I can see that your excellence in what you do is just perhaps one large step for someone, because after that they have to get into the presence of placement people and hiring managers and things like that. So how do you bridge the gap from your clients to actually them becoming employed?
Most of my clients go through like a comprehensive program where we're doing a lot of activity around job search strategy so that they understand their own value proposition.
How have you seen the employment landscape change in the last couple of few years?
Oh, that's a loaded question, because I love to talk about career economy. I have a newsletter I send out. It's actually, I got to write it. It's going out tomorrow. In the period from March of 2020 until this past fall, so the fall of 22, there was a 2.5 year period with some micro trends that were just so all over the place, from 6 months of dried up jobs because of the, immediate impact of the pandemic, to then reactionary hiring tears to recover from that saw the great resignation. They saw people getting 3-4 offers, 20% over market value. There was a month, July 21, I had 41 people get jobs in 30 days. And so now we're in a situation where it is an employer favored market. Job searching at the professional level is tight. If you're in hospitality, F&B, or service, there are statistically 2 jobs for every one of you. Mm-hmm. But in that, I don't know if it's still taboo to say, but in the white collar world, things are super, super challenging right now. And you just have to be really strategic, very focused, and you can get it done.
Do people want to go out and go back to the office after maybe perhaps we're not working for 3 years? And now, it's like, what am I going to get? I have no security working for you, and there's no perks or benefits. And what the heck?
Yeah, there's a very interesting dynamic around that. The short answer is yes. That's one of the reasons unemployment's at a historic low. We're lower than we were in 1969, because now 2.5, 3 years after this whole rigmarole we've been through, life is normalized, and it's like, okay, I can go back to work. Or there was a parent who stayed home for the last 3 years who's like, okay, now I need to go and bring that second income in. There's a lot of different motivators that are bringing people back off the sidelines in a way that even like, but there's also interesting counters to this, because then you have baby boomers retiring. You also have retired baby boomers coming back in because of the cost of living. So there's all kinds of little like side data that I find really interesting.
There may be low unemployment. That doesn't mean that people are living any sort of a better lifestyle, or that they can afford to live even with their jobs, because there are a lot of employers, especially you made mention of the hospitality industry. Did you know that a tipped person can be paid $2.13 an hour? So,
I lived with one of those people. So my husband was an F&B guy for 17 years until the pandemic. And then he's now absorbed himself into career benders. But it is also, side note, that is why you should be nice to your service industry professionals and tip generously, because ain't nobody living on $2.13 an hour right now.
Oh, well, hang on there. You just grabbed me with something that's very important and deep for me. Now, I was a chef for many, many years. I ran restaurants. I owned a restaurant in Rotterdam. I've worked the front of the house, the back of the house, and everything in between. And I have a certain stance as a food journalist about tipping. Tell me why people should tip generously. Why should I, as a customer, pay you as a wait person a bunch of money out of my pocket above and beyond what I'm being charged, which is usually overpriced food and perhaps not so great service? Why should I care about you, and why should I pay you when your employer is not interested enough in taking care of you?
So obviously, as a service industry professional, if you want to fetch competitive pay via tips, you have to give good service. So there's our, let's just set that foundation right now. However, what I don't believe, because I've never worked in a restaurant. I am one of the, there are people out there who've never worked in F&B. My job when I was 16 years old was the grocery store. So I've never worked in it, and I didn't understand this, and I didn't have as much sympathy for it until I was married into it. And the bottom line is the ticket, the price you see on the menu is going to overhead and food costs before it's ever ending up in the pocket of the person who is delivering your plate to the table. And their pay is generally $2.13 an hour unless you give them additional.
How is that any different than a guy, let's say like myself, who was running food tours, who had overhead and costs and employees who he paid very handsomely? And so how does that change the whole nexus of it all, when I'm willing to pay people a great living wage and I still have overhead, I still have costs, I have inventory and things like that? Why should restaurant owners get off without having to pay their people a living wage?
They shouldn't. I don't agree. There should be a much more standard. The industry needs to be standardized.
Over the past 3 or 4 years, they have tablets at the pay station, at the old whatever they call it, the cashier station, that automatically obligates a customer to tip. And they'll have a suggested tip there at the tablet, at the register or the station where you're going to pay. And it puts us into a very uncomfortable and awkward situation as a customer. However, I'm finding out that it's generating a lot more money for the restaurants and for the places that are doing that have maybe perhaps self-serve or other aspects of the payment system to pass through. So it's different than the old days when it was up to me to tip my people or to leave a tip. And now it's like they're setting you up in an opt-out instead of an opt-in.
Yeah, it used to be, I would say, a little bit more proactive on our part as a customer. And now there's the veil of obligation there a little bit more. So maybe somebody important is listening to us right now and will actually take our advice. Who knows?
Something that dovetails out of this conversation about F&B and how effed up that is with all the things we've just been discussing. What about other scenarios in which people are being priced out of the market, let's say because of AI? So someone who's a coder, who's an expert communicator, or otherwise maybe a great writer is now being pushed aside or being offered lesser amounts of money because of AI's entry into the marketplace.
AI, let's say, in the bigger picture, is not going to replace jobs. It's going to displace jobs. And what I mean by that is, let's pick an example of a manufacturing line. Right now, there are still human elements to manufacturing lines that, in my opinion, over time will probably be almost 100% transferred to robotics. That manufacturing worker becomes displaced because they don't have the ability to fill the new job that becomes available by programming the AI that's making the thing.
An interesting perspective, but do you think that in reality that's true? If you can build a robot to make French fries and hamburgers that it would take 20 people to do, it's not going to be creating 20 more jobs. You have to think about the learning curve that's going to be involved when someone who's at a certain level has to learn, create, understand what it takes to be able to manage AI in the laboratory or in the field in whatever setting it might be.
Exactly. That's exactly it. And I think overall, the more we as individuals can adopt and understand these things, the better positioned we will be to make sure the displacement is as minimal as possible for us as an individual. However, I fear it is being advanced. I don't know if that's the right word. I feel that it is snowballing at a little bit of an uncontrolled rate in a way that could tip the scales the other way quickly, if not monitored.
That's what machine learning is all about. That's what really the design is all about.
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't know how you use it, but I can expect that probably someone who's bright knows how to utilize and work within the Chat GPT and other AI modalities to be able to get better output than someone who's just trying it for the first time. So I'm saying it depends on the prompts that you put into it as to what kind of information you're going to get out of it.
Newsflash, not everything on the internet's true.
Oh my gosh. What other interesting things have come up in these last couple of years related to business, related to news, employment, AI, or anything else? Are there any really juicy and chewy stories you want to talk about?
Oh, the last 8-ish years, ATS have really come on the scene, which is in front of my mind because it has AI-like aspects that streamline hiring processes. And I feel in general, all of that has dehumanized the hiring process. Tell us
what that is, ATS.
So ATS are applicant tracking systems. And if you apply to a job at Walmart, let's say, there's a very good chance your resume is being scanned for data by a computer algorithm who will either positively parse you or just leave you in the database. If you're positively parsed, Then you go through, let's say, what we would have known as an older school normal hiring process with humans in it.
I think that is very timely because, there are a lot of people who are thinking that if I'm going straight into the round file because of whatever computer is scanning this stuff, they're missing out on a whole lot of good. And that's a difficult way to run a business. It may be more efficient from a business perspective, but if you dehumanize things, then how really good is it going to be?
If you have a company or you own a business out there, I really want you to think about the experience that you are like, what kind of carpet are you rolling out for the people who may want to work for you or you may want to work for you? Is it red and plush and has paparazzi and cameras all over it? Or is it a piece of freaking AstroTurf from Lowe's?
People say that we're dealing with people and people's emotions, but all that I keep saying is that people don't answer their phones. We used to be able to call people in the old days. Now no one answers a telephone. You have to text someone to see if it's okay to call them. Yeah. You don't knock at someone's door and say, hey, can Angie come out and play? Because how dare you show up at someone's doorstep and how dare you call them? So how do you, like, in a supposedly world that we're supposed to be getting closer and tighter and more warm and fuzzy, it keeps on going further and further away from that.
Statistically speaking, we are less connected than we've ever been, even though there is this veil and perception that we are hyper connected because of the internet and social media. And social media is can we just say it? That's what broke the whole system.
Right.
I think it's sad that we're all craving real, authentic connection, yet especially younger generations don't even know how to go and achieve that because they've always just had that technology, blocker in between. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I get worried about who's going to be my doctor when I'm old.
Well, it's weird. You'll know there's a certain part of your life when you go, wow, this doctor is younger than me. It's just like, I don't know, you probably haven't reached that yet, but I reached that some 20 years ago. And I thought, wow, that's pretty wild.
I have opinions. I'll throw them out. The other thing you mentioned, though, when you said nobody calls, nobody emails, even the application process for jobs, you get ghosting is all over the place. And I have a friend and client. You may need to have her on. Her name's Greta. She has a company called Coping with Ghosting. Oh. And she is all about the idea that we need to stop this because that is why I also think our mental health suffers is because it's so easy to ignore people.
Yeah, I think those are all worthy goals. I just don't see it as something that is happening.
That's why it's all rhetorical because it ain't gonna happen.
Right. So where do we go? We get more computers and more cameras and more shows like this to be able to show that people can still be people.
Yeah. Well, that's going to happen anyway. So there's no point in saying, no, we shouldn't.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, gosh.
But
okay.
I think the bottom line, in my opinion, is we can't control those things. However, we can control what we do to take care of ourselves, what we do to take care of the people around us and our fellow humans. Mm-hmm. And that's what I hope you and I get to encourage people to do is to be more aware and have more meaningful engagement so that we can at some point turn this thing around just a tiny bit insofar as we can control it.
Right. So. Have you ever thought about these cooking competition shows that once upon a time cooking shows were about cooking and learning about cooking? Now it's about competitions and eating.
And I used to love when the Food Network came out in 2003, because I don't know if I ever told you about this about myself. My dream job is to have a show on the Food Network. I love to cook. I love all that kind of stuff. I remember when the Food Network came out, I'm probably past my prime and created a different business. So here I am. But I used to love to sit down on Saturday mornings and actually sit on the couch and sit on the couch and drink coffee out of a real mug, not my Yeti travel mug.
Right.
And watch cooking shows, real legit cooking shows. When I was a little kid, I used to do the PBS, Marianne Esposito, Jack Papin was on, Julia Child for a little while. Ming Tsai had a show. Right. Remember Martin Yen?
Yeah.
Cut it up.
Yen
that guy,
cook.
Yen can cook. That's what I grew up doing. And then when the Food Network came out, I was like, oh my gosh, I can do this every Saturday morning. And now it's like Chopped and Guys Grocery Games, which are fine, but I still miss just watching somebody make a good old recipe that makes me want to go bake some.
Cooking has become sort of like the way production has, where you have nowadays, you have these quick cuts. There's nothing more than a half a second. Back in the old days when they'd make shows or movies or whatever, they'd have long scenes where people could emote and communicate and do all these wonderful, colorful things.
Yeah, because you had one camera and one camera, right? And that was it.
Yeah.
That's all you got. So,
it's television, so they've got to make a story. They've got to create a dramatic through line, and there's got to be some emotion in it. So it's not just like the old days where you could just watch a guy hang out at the wharf and cook something right there on a little gas stove.
You know what I wonder sometimes, since we're getting into a little like posterity, what in 20 or 30 years is somebody my age going to go and say, oh man, I remember 2023 when we could do blank, blank, and blank. Where are we going?
You're going to be able to look back and say, oh yeah, that's when AI started. When I look back, I go, do you remember rotary phones? Do you remember those little music boxes that you have in the diner that were right there on the wall next to you on the table where you could put in, a quarter and listen to it? Do you remember Magic Fingers at the hotels?
Yeah. There used to be a little music box on the booth instead of the Toast order system now.
Right. So on a percentage level, how much ageism would you say there is in the whole hiring world?
Oh, well, I don't know that I can. I'm going to answer that, but not in the way you asked. I'm going to say the age of 50 is the over under of ageism, where it kicks in. So it's not necessarily a percentage of ageism, but where I see it commonly starting to trigger is somewhere around 50. But it's also highly dependent on the functional role or functional area of a business you work in and the types of roles you're vying for. So here's an example. I find sales and marketing, sorry, everybody who's in sales and marketing, to be the worst culprits around, because I think there's the perception that somebody who's 50 can't sell to somebody who's 30. And it couldn't be further from the truth. However, if you're an executive, then you need to be 45, 50, 55 because you need the tenured experience that aligns with the roles. So there is a matrix of things to discuss and how to combat ageism, but it is there. It's true.
It is there. It is true. And, it's interesting that you just broke it down the way you did, so we can kind of understand like who is practicing that a little bit more and what the benefits would be to have somebody without experience try to replace someone with experience, which is called ageism.
Exactly. And I think the ageism thing kicks in for a few different reasons. Again, let's throw out your age is appropriate to your level situation, the CEO situation, and say you're a 50-year-old sales rep, right? I think that there is the perception you can't relate to the customer. There's the perception you can't relate to a team of people 20 years from you. And there's the perception that you got one foot in the grave on one of banana peel and you're going to retire in a year. And what frustrates me is people aren't even given the opportunity to have that conversation and state their intentions that like, hey, I might be 57, but I'm going to work for another 10 years because otherwise I'm going to be bored out of my mind. Would you like me for 10 years because I don't want to go job search when I'm 60, 3 years from now? Or do you want to go hire a 35-year-old who's going to leave you in 18 months?
Right. Well,
you got me fired up now, Matt.
No, I'm good. That's good. That's what I wanted. There's no perception in the marketplace that people are going to have a golden parachute. They're going to be able to get away scot-free anyway. It's like it's just going to be a goodbye. It's going to be a cold shoulder and a goodbye. So what's the sense? People don't want to work for companies until they're ancient.
Well, it's tricky because some people do. And then it's just a total mind bleep out there.
Another question. What fonts are you totally sick of and that's being wiped out nowadays? Because I know you have to, Arial. Because everybody's got their thing.
Yes. And so I use Calibri for resumes because it's a nice square font, right? It's the same height as it is width. You can get a nice number of characters on a line and an 11-point font, and it's not too busy. And I never fail. I'll have a client who's like, I hate Calibri, and they'll change it to freaking Arial. And I'm like, cringe.
Right. What 3 people, whether deceased or still with us, would you like to have a dinner with? I
would like to have a dinner with, Oh, this is good. I've had to answer this before, and it tends to land more categorically than individual humans, like somebody from way, way back history. Jesus, Moses, Noah, any of those types of somebody from biblical age, I'll say. I would like to meet.
Not necessarily religious, though.
Not necessarily religious. I think I would really enjoy meeting a former politician, president. Obama comes to mind just because I love and miss him. But somebody just because it's like, what's it really like and how broken is it? Right. So just something in that vein. And then somebody from like, I would say more pop culture, either, an original member of one of the bands I really enjoy, and a really cool author like Napoleon Hill. I wouldn't mind meeting Andrew Carnegie because he founded Carnegie Mellon, which is where I went to school, but he was also a super smart business guy. That might be top of my list now that I stream of conscious to my answer to you. But
okay, so
there you go.
Jesus, Obama, and Andrew Carnegie.
There's my answer.
Sitting at your dinner table. What are you cooking for them?
Oh, I am hands down making homemade pasta.
Made of what? You're gluten sensitive.
My pasta recipe, it's been a little while. It actually would probably be, I don't know. I love dinner parties. A seat at our holiday table is a coveted thing. I would actually, my real answer to that is I would probably curate a menu based on what I knew their favorite foods are, but I do love to cook Italian food. I have a gluten-free pasta recipe. It's been a minute since I made it, that has rice flour, cassava flour. It's got like 5 flours, potato starch, probably tapioca and xanthan gum in it. In particular, I really like making ravioli.
Okay,
weird things. I like making filled pasta.
Oh, anything stuffed.
And then there
good.
would definitely be dessert. I love to make dessert.
What would you make?
Either a brown butter semifreddo that I love to make, or a bundt cake.
There you go. Extremes.
Why do I like to make bundt cakes? I don't know. Maybe it's how the frosting or the glaze pools in the middle of the bundt, and so you get extra when you make it. I made an Italian cream cake for Easter a few weeks ago. That was dynamite.
And did you make it in a bundt pan?
That I actually made a layered cake.
Okay.
My last bundt, I believe, was a double chocolate cake because Jim's family was visiting, and they're all chocolate freaks.
Yeah, what's cool about a bundt cake is the way that the icing drips down. It's sort of like in pottery, the way that the glaze kind of drips down, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so say hi to Jesus, Obama, and Andrew Carnegie for me.
Okay, well, you want me to pull up an extra seat so you can have some lasagna with us?
I would love to hang.
Okay, cool. Come on over.
Really great. Thank you, Angie. Really, really
You're
appreciate
welcome.
you coming down and hanging with us here on 50 Tastes of Gray.
My pleasure. Anytime you want never-ending opinions about anything, I'm there.
Beautiful. Looking forward to it. Take care.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You soon. You bet. Bye-bye. That was fun. Thank you.
I know. I liked it was random, but not random. Like we just kind of flowed, circled back.
Kind of circle back, come back to it.
It's got to have some sort of theme, but I also like it when it's not really scripted.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of what I'm doing. That's what the whole Tastes of Gray thing is about.
I know. I like it.